Been a couple weeks since I connected last with my guest, but you know, life is so fleeting and so unpredictable, and so it's just my guest was going having a hand surgery that turned out to be successful. He's removed his stitches, and he's hoping to be able to get his axe back in his hand. And I think we're all sort of day to day, but it's always unpredictable. 2 nights ago or 3 nights ago, Al Di Meola had a heart attack on stage. My dear uncle Dom Fumilaro, who was one of the greatest ambassadors of music, passed away from pancreatic cancer at a far too young age. So I take it very seriously, my job. I also take seriously the humbleness of living a righteous life, and I know my guest does as well. Dallas Hodge, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, Jake. It's a pleasure to be back. Sorry for all the discombobulation and moving of scheduling.
That was worth it,
man.
Things
have been happening, and I had a washing machine decide that it didn't want to keep the fill level at the right level, overflowed, and I had an inch of water in my laundry room, and then had to go out and go buy another washer dryer. So it's like anything that could go wrong this week went wrong.
Well, I'm glad you're dry, and I'm glad you're safe. I wanted to ask you, out of all the Funk Brothers, were you guys closest with Bob Babbitt? Did you know any of those cats very well? Dennis Coffey?
I think I met Dennis once and Bob once, but I wasn't that close to them. Now, my drummer, Larry Zach, because they're in the older age group, my drummer, Larry Zach, knew Coffey and he knew Bob real good.
I think Coffey. Well, this is what I want. I wanted to read this to you, and I know that you weren't part of this exactly, but I wanted to know if it even got on your radar. This is from an interview I did with a great bass player from Detroit, Reggie McBride. He said, Reggie. He said there was an exodus from Detroit in 1972 of cats that were with Motown but had to move to L.A. because Motown moved to L.A. and the Funk Brothers had nowhere to go.
Right.
I remember talking to Eddie Willis at the 20 Grand, and he told me that everybody split at the same time. They were mad at Berry Gordy because he didn't do anything when he got out there about getting them some work. If you didn't come out here on your own, you were basically lost. If you did get out there and you were able to break into the studio, he would use you. Now,
right.
My question for you is, was there a seismic change in the vibe of the Detroit music scene in your mind when Motown moved to L.A.?
Somewhat. I wouldn't say it was monumental, except for those people who were truly close to the label.
Sure.
For me, it didn't really make any difference at all. Actually, as a matter of fact, my partner in crime in the music side, Gary Putnam, a.k.a. Diz, he was playing with a band then that they went down, and it was an all-white band, and they went down to Motown to audition. And I forget who Barry's sidekick was at that time, but he came into the room where they were playing and said, "Oh, come on into the studio. I want to take and track this, and so Barry can hear it." Okay. It went in, they tracked it. 6 weeks later, it was out and became a huge hit by the Capitals called...
What was the name of the band?
They were called the Capitals, I believe. And
wow.
And the name of the song was Cool Jerk.
Holy cow.
Yeah. That was, Barry had a reputation. Junior did, not as much as Senior did, but Barry Jr. did have a reputation for, shall we say, borrowing other people's songs without letting them know.
Yeah. My God. Over. So what you're telling me that your partner in crime had his song ripped by another group?
The band that he was playing with, yes. They went down and they auditioned to try to get on to... I think Motown had a white side label.
You're
at the time.
absolutely right, dude. This is wait. So when you say they went down, you mean they flew out to L.A. or they were in
No, they went to into Motown in Detroit.
Wow. So yeah, because there was a white. You're right. A white label. I see a few of those things. They never really do it for me, but I'm always curious about that. And then you're telling me that the song that they at least demoed eventually wound up with a group called the Capitals.
They wrote the song, and Motown stole it, and they recorded it for the Capitals. It became property of Motown, and back in those days, nobody went up against Motown to fight them legally. They were just too big, too many big lawyers, and too much money.
Wow.
So, if you were a lone artist, so to speak, and something like that happened, what are you going to do? There's nothing you could do. And, nowadays it would be a lawsuit from here to New York and back. But, back then it was just Motown was too big to mess with. So it was like, they lost that song, but it was amazing because when the Capitals came out with it, Diz was telling me he was driving in the car and all of a sudden he heard Kojak, Kojak, and was like, oh man, that's us, but not us.
Dude, I would have like lost. I'm glad I didn't get in a car accident. I would have freaked out.
Oh yeah.
Oh my.
I mean, well, it was like I told you about the thing with Grand Funk.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
It was like when I got in the car one day and I heard Grand Funk doing some kind of wonderful. I was like, huh? And then when it ended up being, we did a slight rearrangement on that. I think I shared that with you. And towards the tail of the tune, it was pretty specific, and you could tell that we had did a rearrange of that section. And they did it exactly like we had done the night that they popped by the red carpet. So it's like, okay, and the fact that the Soul Brothers 6 wrote the song, I couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
And there wasn't enough of a rewrite to get at least mechanical. So, it was like, okay, well, thanks, guys. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I'm glad it was a big hit for you.
Dude, that is... So, let me just get to the... So, ultimately, this is fascinating to me because, one of my heroes, Neil Cassidy, lived out in Los Gatos. Why did you wind up moving ultimately to Santa Cruz later in the decade, in the 70s?
In 1977, my drummer, Diz, my partner, his sister and brother-in-law lived in Santa Cruz, and Rusty, his brother-in-law, they built a trimaran that they ended up sailing to Hawaii when they moved there.
My God.
But Diz moved out because he wanted to move to the West Coast. He was burned out on Detroit and just wanted to go. And I said, all right, well, I'll be out there. Give me a year and I'll meet you there. So the winter of 77, 78 in Detroit was one of the worst winters on record. And I had a little 69 Austin America, okay, which is kind of like a square back Volkswagen, only a lot smaller.
Right.
I love that car. And I was getting off the freeway one day to go to home, and the car only weighed about 1,800 pounds. So, and there was about 6-7 inches of snow, and it was all piled up on the sides where they had bladed the drive, the exit ramp and stuff. Anyway, I lost it at the top of the ramp and put it into a snowbank. So I had to get out of the car, and, I ended up pulling it out of the snow myself because of the fact, like I said, it was only like about 1,700 pounds, and on ice it's fairly easy to move. And I told now my wife, when I got back to the apartment, I said, that's it, we're done. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, by November 7th next year, we will be in California.
Wow.
Period. And she goes, nah. I said, trust me. So I had bought a Chevy step van, built a bunk behind the driver's seat in the back end of the truck, had a couch underneath that, installed a buddy seat and a secondary gas tank. And that next year, I ended up moving 3 of the guys from the band in Detroit with me to Santa Cruz to join up with Diz and continue the band.
Wow.
And I rolled into Santa Cruz on the 7th, as I had predicted. After much grimace of getting there, I had to rebuild a transmission in North Platte, Nebraska.
Oh, my God.
Broke down, and then had a tire blowout in Reno. Then get that repaired. And I had new tires on the truck, which was really weird. My father worked at Unioil, and I think I shared that with you.
You did, yeah. So you had new tires, and they
I had new tires, and for whatever reason, those tires separated. And I had it happen twice. Once in Reno, which we ended up parking in the parking lot of a Uniroyal dealer and slept in the truck overnight in order to get them to take and call Detroit and get authorization to replace the tire. And then I had another one separate once when we were going to Modesto with Steve Marriott. So, same issue again. It separated, and that was a whole other story.
Well, no, I mean, I just want to be clear. This is just fascinating because, you guys were you a regional touring band? How were you making? Essentially, you were a local band, and you were singing for your supper that way, or were you guys touring the Midwest?
Well, when we lived in Detroit, we did anything from, we covered Michigan, Ohio. We go down to Illinois or Indiana every once in a while. We went up to Pennsylvania a couple of times. So yeah, I guess you could say we were the tri-state area, as it was known.
Mm-hmm.
That was our proving ground, so to speak.
And you were essentially playing 6-7 nights a week, 3-4 sets a night. I mean, you weren't like a studio shark. You were primarily making your money playing live.
We were a performance band. We were doing some clubs where we would do 2 to 3 sets a night, and then on weekends we would try to travel as much as possible and hit festivals on the weekend, hit some clubs on the weekend. But that was pretty much what we did.
You still felt, or maybe you can just talk about how you, obviously you're loyal to the core. My mom's from Saginaw. I freaking love the loyalty of Detroit, but you still felt the vocabulary, the music was growing enough where you wanted to bring the band out there with you?
Well, I was always one of those guys that, whatever band I ever had, they did not die quickly.
I did.
It was, I tried to always surround myself, as I think I said in the first part, with people that I could get along with.
Right. I love that.
I did not look for people who were the best or most badass players. I had a few of those, which was great because it worked really good from the standpoint I could get along with people very well, and they could get along with me very well. And if I got those hot dog guys, that was just one notch better. But I left Detroit with a bass player named Drew Charles, and I brought the guitar player that I was telling you about that said I was legendary there, George Lemberg. I brought him. I brought a saxophone player named Tomo Thomas, and we came out in my truck with my dog and moved to Santa Cruz and met up with Diz there, and then we started working gigs in Santa Cruz and started working Santa Cruz to Monterey, and then Santa Cruz up to Half Moon Bay, and then up into San Francisco and the whole Bay Area.
Oh my God! I don't want to rush through this. This is magical. First of all, I don't know when you made that declaration to your then girlfriend, now wife, that you were moving. I don't know if it was actually in '78 or still in '77.
It was the winter of '77, '78 because it was so brutal. It was like, I think probably around January or February, I said, we're moving to California.
Right. Well, no, what I was saying is Jake Feinberg came into this life March '78. So that's a very fascinating. That winter, you decided to move out of Detroit, which is amazing. But I need you to paint the picture because what was the vibe in Santa Cruz at that time? It must have been one of the most righteous places to play, and I guess maybe more to the point. It seems easy now, but how did you guys actually create a I don't want to say following, but was it just that easy to find gigs, paying gigs back then? It's pretty
Well,
daunting.
it was. We had a little bit of credentials coming from Detroit.
Right.
You know, not a big credentials, but we had some. And it was relatively easy to find the gigs because Santa Cruz at the time was really a musical community, a very artistic community. Not only music, but in art and custom leather work.
Oh.
You know, I mean, it was a big television set of all kinds of things. So we started out slow. I mean, you know, Diz had been there for a year already, so he was kind of prepping the place for us before we got there.
Totally.
He was already talking to people that, you know, ran clubs and would go and sit in and play with certain people. And, you know, that's when we hooked up with some of the guys from the Doobie Brothers band that used to come out and sit in with us from time to time. Tyrone Porter and...
no way, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Wait, you were playing like... So, like... You're going to tell me the first gig you played was at the Catalyst there?
No. That was about the 10th gig that we played.
Dude, I went there last year. Holy cow, man. That was the most old school. So what were some of the places you were... where were you guys... Like, where was this... the watering hole for your band?
We used to play at the Crow's Nest, which was in the harbor.
Wow. We
played at a club called the Albatross, which was down in Aptos. We played at JJ's Saloon up in the San Jose. We played...
Did you ever play the Saddle Rack or Sam's Place in San Jose? Those were more cowboy bars, but I'm just I wasn't. I mean, so you slowly developed a following. Ultimately, San Francisco. Where were you playing there?
Well, let's see. That's where we played at JJ's Saloon, and I think it was JJ's. Johnny Winter was on the show, and I was opening for him. And then I ended up going and playing half a set with him.
Wow.
And then we played a little club over in Fremont, and on the other side of the bridge.
Totally.
And there was a place down in South San Jose. I can't remember. I know it's on the tip of my tongue. It was like a big cowboy bar, but it wasn't a cowboy bar. It was kind of like a classic rock bar, which was right up our alley at that time.
Well, if you think of it, let me know what the name of it was. Because there was like it was called the Saddle Rack, maybe.
You know,
that would have you would have recognized that. I mean, did everybody dig the vibe out there? I mean, clearly coming from Detroit, it would be heaven. Now you know this better than anybody. I mean, Santa Cruz is like. I mean,
it's changed.
Well, I mean, that's putting it lightly. I mean, it's like gentrification with abject poverty. You know, it's weird.
Right.
You know,
when we had a ball, and the reason being it was. I've said this so many times in my life. We became a big fish in a small pond.
That's huge.
So it was like we got spoiled. It was like when I came to L.A., I was a small fish in a huge ocean. And it was a whole different program. But when I was living in Santa Cruz, we weren't a big fish, but, we were a bigger fish than a lot of the local bands there. And we always strived to do our best in playing our own original music. I did some other people's songs as covers, but they were always songs until this day that I enjoyed playing. So to me, I wasn't really doing a cover song.
Absolutely.
I was doing a performance song. Freddie King's Tore Down, B.B. King's Why I Sing the Blues, even doing Chuck Berry. I mean, it was like we did that, and I, between the two, there was two primary writers in the band at that time. Myself, which I probably did 90%, and the sax player that I had at the time, Kamo Thomas, he had some songs that he wrote that we did. And But it was always the whole. I think one of the reasons why we did as well as we did is because we were an original band. You could go see a cover band at other venues in town, but you had to go to specific venues to see the bands that were doing more original music, like the Catalyst, like there was a club up on Soquel Avenue right by Highway 1. It's still there, JC's Saloon.
Wow.
You know, and a few other places. You know, we used to play a club up in Ben Lomond called Scapazzi's. It was an Italian restaurant. And we do, I think, 3 sets there. They fed us really great Italian.
Dude, that sounds fantastic. Like, you're blasting out original funk, rock, blues in an Italian restaurant?
Oh, yeah.
This is... Let me ask you, this is so...
I used to have a song that I used to do all the time called El Dorado.
Oh, my God.
And there was a point in time when we were playing at Scapazzi's one night where I forget exactly how it happened, but I think Diz stood up from behind the drums and ended up throwing a shot glass against the wall.
Right.
Next thing we knew, there were about 15 people in the bar doing the same thing. And the owner came up to us on the break and went, "Dallas, can you guys cool it with the glasses?" He goes, "You're costing me a lot of money."
Setting a bad example, dude.
But we became known for that when we went to that club. So even though we didn't do it anymore, other people did.
I know. They were like, "Oh, here's those cats again, man."
Oh, man, it's time to throw the glasses, dude.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant marketing tool, dude. Yeah, because it's so fascinating at that period of time, even though it was happening in the moment, and I'm sure you didn't really have a historical perspective per se, but, you know, I haven't once really heard you talk about this desire to, you know, make a record. You were into your own music because you're not living in LA at that time. You're living in, San Francisco did not have a very big recording scene. It was still, LA was still the dominant factor. Obviously,
Right.
Things were changing with the efficiency model, and you had people, I just remember by the mid 70s, you know, you had producers telling drummers, don't play yourself, just play straight beats. Or just play the hit the way the feel was on the last hit tune we heard. So it was changing. But did you guys get into a studio and actually cut an album, or that was just not a priority?
Well, what happened was, we moved there in 78. In 1979, I think it was, or early 80, we ran into a British guy by the name of Steve Marriott.
Let's talk about him. Because that's not on my radar. So he was over at Scapazzi's. He was in the Italian joint or something.
He would come and see us at different places,
right.
And we met him, and he was living up in Ben Lomond at the time, or Boulder Creek, one of the two up there, and him and Pam. And he came down one time, I think it was at the Crow's Nest, or it might have been the Albatross. And we sat down and started shooting the shit, and one thing led to another, and he basically said, "Would you guys be willing to take and record some songs with me?" And we all looked at him and went, "Sure." So we went in, we cut, I think it was 6 tracks with him. Then he took us to another studio in Modesto,
wow.
Which is all kinds of stories of what happened there.
Whoa.
But he took us to the studio in Modesto and cut 5-6 tracks on us and mixed them. He actually played organ and piano on several of them.
Damn.
And played guitar, I think, on one, but mostly just organ and piano. He was really a good keyboard player. I don't know how many people are aware of that.
No, I knew I actually thought he was. Obviously he was somewhat of an impresario too, but he seemed like a musical partner of yours. He obviously could play.
Oh yeah, and it was hilarious when we were doing rehearsals. It was like we used to set a bucket in the middle of the rehearsal room, and we were rehearsing at a recording studios where we ended up cutting the tracks, and he had this thing that he had put on us, Okay, so all right, ladies, here's what we're going to do. Every time you make a mistake, you've got to throw a quarter in the bucket. Okay, we're down with it. We all had pockets full of change.
Yeah.
So we're rehearsing, and it's like every once in a while, I'd have to throw one in, or Drew would have to throw one in, or George, or Diz, or whatever.
Right, you hit a clam or something, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there was one point where all of us ended up throwing in a quarter at the same time. It was like it was bad enough of a mess up that we all had to throw money in. And we said to Steve, it was like, Steve, what are we going to do with this money in the bucket? Well, he used to like an ale called Elephant Ale.
Mm.
And it was like a medium kind of ale. It was really good, and it was kind of a malt, and it had like about a 12% alcohol content.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we said to him, Steve, what are we going to do with all this money? And he looked at all of us. He goes, ale, mate, ale. So when we had enough money, we'd send somebody to the store and grab a six-pack and bring it back, and we'd keep going again.
Oh, my God, this is great.
He was quite the character. It was like we ended up cutting 6 tracks with him, I think, which 3 or 4 of them made it on to the album that he did before, when he first went back east. We were out on the road touring at the time. We were in Pennsylvania, and he called us on the phone at the hotel. He goes, well, I've got some news for you guys, and this is what's going on. And basically the management company wanted him to take and put back together Humble Pie with Peter. And he goes, I got to do it. And I said to him, Steve, it's your career, okay? I would be remiss if you didn't do it, because this is what is good for Steve Marriott. You've given us a boost, and we love you to death for it, and we'll always be there if you ever need us. But you got to do what Steve needs to do to take care of family and yourself. So we're all behind you 100%. And that kind of brought a tear to both of our eyes on the phone, because we were 2,200 miles away from home and, couldn't see him. And that's what ended up happening. He ended up leaving shortly thereafter. But 3 or 4 of the songs that we did, he did on the first record, which had, I forget the name of it, but it had an airplane on the front of it, like a 38 or a P-45.
Okay, so I just want to be clear. He was in Humble Pie originally.
Yes. He was also in Small Faces.
That's right. Okay, so this dude...
He helped write a bunch of the hits for Small Faces, Itchy Coo Park. I mean, there was a bunch of songs that he did, and then with Frampton and that, with Humble Pie, 30 Days in the Hole, I mean, he penned a lot of big numbers. So
he called you and was like, listen, they wanted to... I don't even know about who was in that.
What happened was
yeah.
we did the songs, and he wanted to play with us. That's what the bottom line was.
Right.
And so we put together a showcase show. I called Seeger's management, Punch Andrews and Bill Blackwell. They flew in from Detroit to see the band because it was special enough. We had a keyboard player that worked with the Doobie Brothers for a while, plus our band, plus the rest of our guys, and with Steve. So we had 3 guitar players.
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean it was a big sound. So Punch decided that because I had known him for years and years and years, as well as Bill. That it was worthwhile enough for them to take a plane and come out and see it. And it's primarily because of the fact, hey, it's Steve Marriott. We might have a shot at taking them. And so they came out. They dug daylights out of the band. Absolutely loved it. Well, at the same time, word got out to Columbia, and they became interested. But they wanted to put Steve back with Humble Pie, and that's where that whole thing came from. And so
using these quote unquote original tunes.
Right. And so what happened was he ended up re-recording those songs with the guys that he did on the record back in New York. He actually flew my sax player at that time, Jimmy Hannibal, from Santa Cruz to New York to play all the horn parts exactly the way he had recorded them with the deluxe band. And Jimmy got credit for it, and he got paid for it on top of it all. So it was just like, okay. I mean, when you listen to that album, those saxophone parts that you hear on that record, those are all Jimmy Hannibal. And the songs, most of the songs on there, Big Train was on there. What I still say to this day that Billy Ray Cyrus stole the lick from that to make his first big hit.
Hold on a second. You said there was an airplane on the cover?
Yeah, it's a brown cover with an airplane on the front.
I'm looking at, like, it says, "Fool for Pretty Face, You Soppy Prat, Infatuation, Take It From Here, Saving It, Baby Don't You Do It, Get It in the End, My Lover's Prayer, Further Down the Road, Over You."
Okay.
Because that's, and I'm looking at...
What was the second one you said? Infatuation?
Infatuation was track 3.
Okay, and I don't know if he did it on that record or not, but we also did a version of All Shook Up.
Yeah, I mean, there might be a couple. I mean, because I'm looking, that was 1980, and then go for the. I'm just trying to figure out. God, this got real. So I'm sorry. You're these original. I just want to be clear about something. He shows up at these, the Crow's Nest. He's digging your band, and then you go in the studio, knock out some demos. And then you just went through that whole story there where ultimately Columbia got interested. But why didn't you get publishing for some of those tunes? Because
I didn't write them. He wrote them all. He wrote them, arranged them. All we did was perform them.
dig. So when you were throwing the quarters in the bucket for the Elephant Ale, that was his tunes. He said, you want to record?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We were rehearsing the songs to record.
I dig. So that is amazing, man. Like, how do you feel you got the memo about being a selfless human being? I mean, to me, like, you made it, you just basically told him, hey, man, you gave us you could have easily been resentful, or even if you really did not, even if you felt the way you did, you still might have pretended to be pissed off, and you were just like, hey, man, go for it.
I learned a long time ago, when my brother did the first Catfish record, before that happened, 3 of the guys in the band quit. Because, I think I told you, because they were not happy about the fact that it was becoming Bob Catfish Hodge as opposed to the Catfish Band.
That's right.
And I replaced those guys with my drummer and bass player. And we kept Harry Phillips on keyboards because he wasn't leaving. And when it came time that the label and the New York management company wanted him to get those guys back in the band, we all got $500 a piece as a separation payment.
I remember. Yeah, that's right.
And for me at the time, that was my brother. And my brother, for me at that time, I was really upset that we didn't get to share the limelight that we worked to get him the deal, only to have those guys come back, and they got to share that limelight. So that hurt me. But then I came to the point in the realization, my buddy Diz, again, Hodge, he goes, just got to remember, business is business, friendship is friendship. And I took a look at that, and I thought about my brother, and I went, you know what? Good for him. He ended up doing what he needed to do to try and further his career, and he's my brother. We don't love each other any less. That's not going to change.
Right.
Am I hurt? Yeah. Am I a little testy about it? Yeah, I am. However, having said that, it was easier for me when Steve was doing what he had to do to just say, hey, you got our blessings. You gave us something that we had not been able to obtain at that point. Not only did we get to record his songs, but he took us into the studio and had us record our songs. Never wanted publishing, never wanted any fees. He took care of everything. So it was like, okay, you go get him. And it was real funny because in 1980, let's see, Hodge Brothers, I moved down here in 82, 83, 84. We had the Hodge Brothers band, and we were playing at a club here, a big venue called the Country Club in Reseda.
Sure.
About a 1,500 seater.
Wow, I love that. I've never been there. That's so classic you were playing there. Go ahead.
So we opened for Marriott at that time, which was prior to him going to go back to New York and hook up with Peter Frampton, which he had moved to England shortly after that, and that's when he died, and that band never got together, which was really sad. But we're playing at the club. My wife is there, and we're playing there, and we got the Hodge Brothers. You know, we're opening the show. We're kicking ass. And Steve's in his bus outside, and so you know he invited us to come out to the bus and sit down and whatever. And he goes, Dallas. He goes, I want you to come with me. I said, what do you mean you want me to come with you? He goes, I want to take you on the bus and take you on the road with me. Wow. I said, okay, when do you want to do this? He goes, tonight. I said, what about your other guitar player? He goes, I'll send him home. And I go, Steve, I can't. He goes, why not? I said, because I'm playing with my brother in this band, and there's no way that I would ever walk away without at least a 30-day notice, especially from a band that I'm loving playing with.
Right.
I said, it can't happen. So it was hilarious. I had to go back inside, and he started talking to my wife, who was there, and he goes, Peggy, you got to do me a favor. She goes, what's that? She goes, you got to talk Dallas into coming on the road with me. She looked at him and chuckled. She goes, hey, Steve, Dallas is Dallas. He's going to do what he's going to do. If he wants to do it, he'll do it. If he doesn't want to do it, I can't do anything to convince him to change his mind.
Wow.
So if you want to try and talk him into it, go for it.
I thought she was going to be like, get your butt on the road. We need the bread, you know? Like.
No, she was really the...
No, she knows you, obviously. That's great.
Well, she's been the breadwinner. You know, I played, you know, the stay-at-home dad.
That's fine. Me too, man. Yeah, I was down with that.
And so she was the breadwinner. She ended up going to work at NBC and eventually grew into the point where she was a producer at NBC.
Holy shit.
They flew her for Doctors Without Borders to Hawaii. They flew her to London to do Friends.
Wow.
They flew her down to Texas to go interview Garth Brooks.
No, yeah, I mean, we're talking like elite level producer here.
Yeah. And I mean, she started out there as the executive secretary to the executive of merchandising for NBC, and eventually grew into getting a production slot. That after her boss left, the big boss that she worked for, Jay, said, "Would you be interested in trying this out?" She goes, "Sure." Well, they gave her a crew, and she started doing what she did, and within 6 months' time, she was getting promoted, and then again, and then promoted, and then again promoted, and it was like, okay. So, you know, she was the breadwinner. And...
well, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out. I tried to get a job at one point in time when we were living in Canoga Park, and it was like I was going to go to work for Aramark. I was trying to get a job at Aramark driving a truck.
Right.
And I said to him, I said, well, you know, I've driven trucks many times. Well, what they called a bobtail, I called, coming from Detroit, a cab and chassis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They said, you drive a bobtail? And I went, what's that? That was like strike number one.
Right. They're like, what is this?
You know,
This guy
you don't know what a bobtail? Okay. Because most of the trucks that they had out here at that time, they were all step vans. I'm looking at that and going, I can drive that all day long, man. Or, you know, you want me to drive to Chicago and back? No problem. But then it came down to, at the time, they were paying like $12 an hour. And we had 2 kids, and I'm like going, okay, if we put them both in daycare, that's $3 an hour per kid.
Right.
There goes $6. Then there's taxes. There goes another $4. and then there's this and that. And by the time it was done, all I was going to do was earn about $2 an hour for working 40 hours a week.
Jeez.
And I just went, this makes no sense at all.
Might as well stay home with the kids.
Hey, and that was it. So that's what I ended up doing. I played Mr. Mom, and then when they got to the age of playing baseball and stuff, they played baseball. I took them all to games, tournaments, in-state, out-of-state, wherever. My oldest son got drafted twice by Major League.
Really?
Yeah, he got drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates as a draft and follow, and they didn't pick up on the draft and follow, and then they got drafted by the Dodgers, but didn't take it because our biggest thing was we didn't care about a signing bonus. What we cared about was education. So we told the scout that was, promoting him to the Dodger organization, he called us, he goes, well, we want to take him. They had him drafted, and I think it was the 23rd round, if I remember right, and which is not bad. So
I mean, who cares at this point?
Yeah, it was like we told him. He goes, "Look, you don't even have to fly him down to Vero Beach. You can take a bus. We don't care about that, but we do care about the school because when we talked with Pittsburgh, they were willing to give him $80,000 at the time to cover schooling if they would have taken him."
Wow.
Okay, so we're figuring, all right, let's make a pop and see what happens with the Dodgers. So they call and they go, well, we're going to offer him $1,000. I said, okay, what about school? Oh, you want school? Yeah, we want school. We don't care about the signing bonus. We want school. Oh, well, let me go back to him. Hour goes around, he calls me back. Well, I got it up to $3,000. Okay, what about school? I'm still trying on that. I said, when you get the school covered, Bump, call me. So about 2 hours went by. I get another phone call. All right, Dallas, best and final offer. I go, okay, what is it, Bump? He goes, we'll give him $5,000 to sign. Well, $5,000 in the 23rd round back then was like the bottom of the barrel. My son was throwing 92, 93 miles an hour. He was a left-handed hitter, a right-handed pitcher, and in his high school year, he led the entire southern section with a batting average of .550.
This was down at SoCal?
Down here in Southern California.
Unbelievable. He had 560?
His batting average was .550.
That's insane, dude.
Yes. And so, I mean, he parked the ball one time on my travel ball team on the roof of the 3-story garage at USC.
Oh my God!
In right field.
They were using? I mean, they were using aluminum bats though. It wasn't using wooden bat.
No, they were using wood back then.
That's so sick. That is so freaking old school. First of all, I'm curious. I don't want to get totally bogged down with this, but why did you not take that $80,000 from Pittsburgh?
They did it as a draft and follow. So when it came to draft day, they didn't take him. So that was just an offer that was on the table, but they pulled back on it.
Okay, so they basically because they rescinded that education fund. Okay, got it.
That's why they put him in as what they called a draft and follow.
I dig.
So when Bump come back with a $5,000, I said to him, I said, okay. I said, what about the school, Bump? He goes, well, here's the deal, Dallas. He goes, the fact that your kid scored 1250 on his SAT, they're scared that he's going to end up going to take the money and go to school. I said, well, that's kind of the plan, Bump. If it doesn't work. He goes, well, they don't want to do that. And I went, okay, fine. We'll see you later. And that was that. Now I've got my grandson, who I just learned the other day, according to Baseball, USA Baseball or Baseball Today, in the entire country right now, he's number 88 out of the top 100 as a catcher hitter.
How old is he now?
16.
And oh boy! All right, so we got to keep an eye on this kid. What's his name?
His name is Landon Hodge. He was going to go to Stanford, but he decommitted because of the fact that they wanted him to take these AP classes or honors classes, whatever it was, that were really tough. And he had to keep a certain GPA in order for the whole thing to fly. And in this last week, he started realizing that even though he was going with a 4.3, that the walls were closing in because the work now was getting more and more. And with his baseball schedule, we live about an hour from his school. So because of the drive time in the morning and the drive time in the evening, he was getting home after baseball at we could be anywhere between 8 and 9 o'clock at night, which just made it extremely difficult for him to get all of his work done.
No, my older daughter, not as prolific in terms of sports. She's on the swim team, but same thing. Senior year, she decided to take this absurd calculus class with all these math freaks, and it's just, she's concerned it's going to cost her a chance at, Columbia.
It's intense.
It is really intense,
and it was funny because when he called the coaches up at Stanford to tell them that what he was going to do, the head coach up there said, "I understand, Landon." He goes, "I'm in your corner 100%, and if there's anything that I can do to help you, I will do so." Well, it just happened to be he called the head coach over at LSU. When he got off the phone with Landon, and 15 minutes later, the head coach at LSU calls Landon and goes, "I want to talk to you."
Jeez, this is always how it works, dude.
Yeah, so now he's got LSU interested. He's got Texas Christian interested. He's got UCLA interested.
Yeah, these are all like College World Series teams,
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I want to ask you about. So your son, you were not a domineering patriarchal kind of family, I don't think, with your kids, but your son didn't be like, "Dad." Well, he was cool with you calling the shots for him.
Well, no, it was always the call was never mine solely. It was never mine solely.
Right.
But he knew, as we knew at the time, that baseball does not last.
Right.
But the education does. And so what happens if you don't make it past 5 years? What are you going to do for work? You need that education. And so, it's like we all had sat down and had the family talk, what do you want to do? He goes, "I'm with you guys. I want to get the education."
Wow.
So when we turned it down, it was just like, okay, I'm just going to go on. He went on to play some college ball and got done with that. And then now he's a coach for 3 different travel ball teams. Matter of fact, he's in Arizona right now. He'll be home tomorrow. He's got an 18 and under team there. These are seniors that this is their last hurrah to try to get some scouts interested, whether it's schools or pro. So he went there with the team to take them and do what they could do.
Dallas, I want to. I would like to finish this set. It's funny. It happens to be this cat's birthday today, and when I first cosmically found that Catfish record with you and those cats on Eastbound, and I wasn't friends with you on Facebook, and a lot of times, if you're not friends with somebody, that message request will never get through. So I sent you the message, and I looked at who our mutual friends were, and one of them was this guy I'm going to ask you about, and I texted him. I said, "Hey, man, do you have any information? Can you hook me up with Dallas?" And within Tony Brownigal, a dear friend, it's his birthday. Did you play with Bonnie Raitt with him, or how did you guys connect?
Oh, man. Let's see. We met Tony years ago.
All I'm saying is that, get me in a room with you, your brother, Tony. We're talking about kicking out the jams hard, dude.
Well, Tony played with us off and on for a while after the Hodge brothers band. He also played off and on with me when it was Tony, myself, and my buddy from Tulsa, Skip Van Winkle.
Oh, my God. Wait a minute, dude. Are there tapes? I need to hear tapes of that.
There's not very many anymore. There were a couple. Fish had a bunch of them, but when his house burnt down, so did the tapes. And Carl Schwabenbauer, who was our sound engineer when we were at All Mahoney's with the Hodge brothers, did all kinds of recordings. Recorded every night. We played there 4 nights a week. He recorded every night. He died unexpectedly of a heart attack, and I never learned about it until like 2 years later, and had no way of getting in touch with his mom, and found out later that she had thrown all of them away.
Well, I mean, I want to before we move on. So also the original. You guys were called. It was Steve Marriott and the Deluxe Band. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So because there's some stuff on YouTube that I'm looking at right now. Did you wind up? Were you able to preserve those studio recordings of your original music with him when he took you in?
Yes. That I have.
That has that ever seen the light of day? I would love to hear some of that. Has that ever?
I also have a. Nobody's heard it, and we've kept it under wraps for the longest time.
Oh boy.
When we did the show at the club that was next door to the Catalyst upstairs, it was called the High Country.
Yes.
It's now a clothing store, I think, or a restaurant. Anyway, when we did that show, we did live video and sound that night. But we had an issue because the guy who was doing the actual engineering didn't listen to the producer about how things needed to be set up.
Yep.
And so there were some glitches along the way. So we couldn't use the video because of the sound glitches, or because of the video glitches, they wouldn't sync properly.
Totally.
However, I do have 3 reels. I just had them all done. I took them to a production house. I had these 2-inch reels that John Chesley, who was the executive producer on that, he had asked me, could I take and get them put onto a hard drive, because the tapes were old, obviously, 40 years old, and wanted to take and have them put on a hard drive to preserve them. So I took them to a shop here in town, which did a great job. Matter of fact, they were working on Little Feet shit when I was there.
Wow.
Copying all of it and putting it onto a hard drive. And so I now have all of the songs from that live show, except for the intro on one, from that live show that we did, now on a hard drive. And so I took that hard drive to my engineer that I work with in the studio and asked him, I said, Tim, I need you to take and remix all of this stuff so that it sounds as good as possible. So he spent, I can't even tell you how many hours. And it was very difficult because it was only a 4-track recording.
Sure.
So because of that, you've got this group and that group and this group and that group, and trying to get the sound sonically to match and sound good, and then mix everything so that it is cohesive, took him a lot of hours.
You're right. To get it to sound bright and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to get it to sound like it was cohesive.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? That overall sound and tone and all of that was good. So, and John was paying for me to have Tim do that, which was good because, Tim was doing it for me because he's my engineer and a good friend. So he did it. It came out sounding really, really good. I gave John Chesley his copy of it, and I said, what are you going to do? What's your plan to do with this? I said, because I really want to do something and put it out. And I says, and I won't do that until I talk to Pam and she can talk to the kids to make sure that it's okay for me to put it out, because, I'm not doing it for the money. I mean, if I make money, that's
it's called legacy. It's called legacy.
Yeah. And I said, and whatever royalties that, come in, obviously Steve wrote, the material except for my songs that we did on the show. I'm going to set it up through the publishing companies that, he gets all of that, you and the family get all of that. I don't want any of that. I'll take what's mine, but I ain't going to bother taking his. That's not fair. So John said he was going to get in touch with Pam and talk to her and see if it was okay to do something with it. Now, that was about 6 months ago, and I haven't talked to John since then, so I don't know where we are in the process. And obviously, I can't let anything of that out.
No, I'm curious about. Well, that's fantastic, and I hope that continues to move forward. Did you? What is the earliest Dallas Hodge original stuff? Maybe going back to the Detroit days that you recorded that I just want to hear. There's just not enough Dallas. There's a lot of Catfish Band. I mean, there's a lot of the, and it's unbelievably funky and nasty. Bob Babbitt played piano on one of your brother's records that you were on.
Oh yeah, he played on the first Catfish Hodge album. I think he also played on the second album too.
This one was from like
He became a minister, and last time I talked to him, it was the weirdest thing, Jake. He calls me out of the blue. Hadn't talked to him in I don't know how many years. And he said to me, he goes, Dallas, he goes, Bob Babbitt. I go, hey, man, how you doing? You playing? He goes, no, I'm a minister now. I said, oh, okay, what's up? He goes, well, I'm calling you. He goes, I've got some keys and some towels from a Holiday Inn. And I'm like going, okay.
Yeah.
What you want me what you want me to do there, buddy? He goes, well, I was wondering if you could tell me how would I be able to send it back to them? Now this is like 15 years, 20 years
Dude,
later.
What is going on?
And I'm like going, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, are you losing it? I mean, because Pat Freer, the drummer on that stuff, he had told me that Bob had become a minister and stuff, and Pat had talked to him once. It's kind of a similar conversation. We're all wondering, is he losing it?
Yeah, right. That is so insanely. I mean, it's kind of humorous, but that's bizarre.
Yeah, it was just bizarre. I mean, it's like, if you want to get the keys back, I said, Holiday Inn has a thing where you just put them in the mailbox and it goes to them. I said, as far as the towels are concerned, I got nothing to tell you.
And he's like, okay, thanks, Dallas.
That was it. And I haven't talked to him since, except when I tried to I was going to take and try and put the Catfish Hodge band back together to do one gig. And that was going to be it. And I tried to do it before Billy Lamlis passed away and wasn't able to. And then I tried again after Billy was gone, but before Shaky Al Wernigan passed away. And I thought, I know a couple of bass players in Detroit that would be more than happy to learn Billy's parts note for note because he was such a good bass player. And I still couldn't put everybody together. It was just like, Babbage was like, well, I ain't played in 15 years, and I don't know. I said, I got you covered. I have another piano player that will set up on stage with you, and whatever you think you can't do, he will come in and sit next to you on another keyboard and play the parts. Well, I don't know. It was just like, and I had to just give up on it. And it broke my heart because one day I was in a rental car. I was going to rehearsals in Detroit. I had gone back to do the All-Star thing. And I had gotten the new CD that came out with the best of Eastbound Catfish Hodge.
Sure.
And it's a double CD.
I just saw that, yeah.
There are songs in that CD that even Fish and I didn't remember recording.
Wow.
Well, we talked about it after I got my copy. I called him on the phone. I said, Bob, where did this track come from? I said, I remember playing the parts, but when did we record this?
Wow.
And apparently it was one of the tracks that just never made it to a record. And I couldn't remember it, Jake, to save my life. So anyway,
were they really good? They were burning tracks?
It was a smoking rock and roller, I'm telling you. So I'm driving in the car, and I'm going to rehearsal, and all of a sudden I'm listening to I'll Be Gone, and then I'm listening to The Boogeyman.
Yeah.
And then I'm listening to She's So Heavy, and I'm going batshit crazy. I am dancing in the car. I pull up to park at rehearsal. I couldn't get out of the car. I had to call Fish from the car. I said, you ain't going to believe this, man, but I'm sitting here waiting in front of a rehearsal hall, and I cannot get out of the car because this shit sounds so good, I'm going nuts. It was a smoking band. It was absolutely. I to this day, the two best bands I've ever played with, for me personally, was the Catfish Hodge band, the original Boogeyman lineup, and the Hodge Brothers band. And that's the two best bands I've ever played with. I played with some of the best musicians and some of the greatest musicians as far as notoriety was concerned when we did the Hodge Brothers. Like I was telling you, Marty Greb, David Woodford, Skip Van Winkle,
Come
Freebo.
on, dude.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just gonna go on a limb here. Did you ever cross paths with? He's a dear friend of mine. I haven't talked to him in a minute. Jimmy Keltner.
Sure.
Did he ever play with the Hodge band? Did he ever play with you guys?
No. But I did have Ian Wallace play with me for a while, who was the original drummer in King Crimson.
Oh, dude. Dude. Honestly, you're good. I mean, that's the other thing we definitely gonna have to do set 3 because one thing we really haven't talked about is just like your guitar style and just like the flow of your guitar is insane. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you played with all these cats. What is very surprising and to me a bright spot is that number one, you're still here, and number two, you're not jaded. You know, I mean, yeah, you get feisty about stuff. You get, some stuff still sits in your craw. I don't know. There are cats that are pretty resentful as they get older. The phone stops ringing. They think they were completely responsible for what was coming through them, whether it was their apparatus or their voice, not realizing that they were only partially responsible for it. I just feel like you got the memo on that, man, and you're blessed because of it, man.
Well, I wish that I would have somehow been able to drum up more notoriety on myself.
Well, Jake Feinberg found you. Now you're all over the place, dude.
I don't allow it to eat me up because I learned a long time ago, if you allow it to eat you up, you lose, period. And it was like when I changed the name of the band 20 years ago now, 20 plus years ago, to Dallas Hodge.
Right.
The guys in my band over the time from then and through up till the band now, I mean, the guys I've got with me now have been with me from the newest guy in the band's been with me for 8 years, and the longest one is now going on 13 years. People, like I told you, my bands don't die fast.
No, I mean, and it's fair to say that there were some strained times within this group, but you helped.
Yeah. And it's like, people have asked me a couple of times. Guys in the band asked me in the very beginning when they started first. The guys started working with me. Why is it that you just call it Dallas Hodge? I said, because Bonnie Raitt told me something. And they went, okay, what'd she say? I said, Bonnie said, use your own name. You're the front man. That's the best that I can tell you. And I took from that and I figured it out. There's a lot of reasons for that. One, if I'm going as the front man, I'm the singer, the guitar player, the songwriter, and I'm the one they're dealing with. I should be out in front.
That's right.
And I don't mean that from an arrogant, egotistical standpoint, from a business standpoint solely. And the other part of that is that if I go as a band, and I did a band thing for probably the majority of my career, actually, the Deluxe Band, Salvage, HVWT, I mean, a bunch of them. And it was like, every time you changed a personnel guy, guess what? You had to change all your promo. You had to change all the photos. And that gets costly. And it's a big pain in the ass.
Yeah, that's insane. I didn't think about that, yeah.
So I just figured that, hey, I call it Dallas Hodge. I put my ugly mug on there for the most part. When we came out with the CD in 19, that had a group shot. It still said Dallas Hodge, but that had a group shot. And I still use that group shot for my promo stuff because those guys have stuck with me through thick and thin. They've done $30 gigs and they've done $300 gigs with me. And they're there whenever I call. So, they all have the same affection that most of the musicians that I've had in my career for the music, and the fact that I'd like to think, anyway, I'm kind of easy to get along with.
I'm telling you this much, man. Next time I'm coming out to California, we got to make it a point to get together, and ideally, you'll be having a gig around that time. I'd love to come see you.
Oh, that'd be great,
yeah,
man. We'll have to go down and get some lunch, breakfast down at Nate's down in the valley.
Oh, dude, we're gonna go and have a ball, man. This has been, it's such an honor to connect with you, man. And let's do it again. Let's do it again soon.
Tony Bronigo, I should say also too. He's played off and on with me for years. We've recorded with other people over years. My first record, Reelin', he did half of the record. And Larry Zach, my current full-time drummer, did the other half of the record.
Yo, by the way, can you hook me up with Larry Zach? I'd love to interview that cat.
Sure.
Oh, my God. I want to get to all this underbelly, right? This is so important, man. These guys, for me as a journalist, you go down these rabbit holes, you don't want to come back up, man.
It's like going after the candy. Once you had a piece, you can't stop.
I mean, come on, man. You're in the snowbank, and I'm being born in '78. I mean, come on. Are you kidding me? Yo, man. Listen, much love. We'll do it again, man.
Let me know, and I'll get in touch with Larry, and I will give him a heads up and tell him that you're going to call him, that you want to interview him, because he was. Dude,
we're talking about a serious OG original cat, dude.
Yeah, he was with Savage Grace. That was his band. They moved out here because of Warner Brothers. He played with Jackson Browne. He played with Lauren Zevon.
You're telling me he's your elder, though? He's your brother's? He's a little bit older than you?
Yeah, he's 70, let's see, he's 74, 75 now, somewhere around there.
I can't wait, man.
Still plays drums like a monster.
Oh, my God. Dude, so, keep me in the loop about, once you get back, get your chops back, and you're feeling all right, keep me in the loop about gigs, because I'll try to get out there to see you guys.
Sounds like a plan.
Hey, brother, much love to your family, man. Good to hear you.
To you, too, and let me know when you want to do part 3.
Absolutely, bro. Probably in person, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, but we'll figure it out. In the meantime, we'll talk soon, man.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you, Dallas. Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
Later.